So, Foundations of Math 20, Chapter 3 review. In the textbook here, you can take a look at this if you want. You can find it there. What page is it on? 150 something. Okay. And here are the frequently asked questions. So we're on page 153, this is. Okay. So to use the cosine law, what do you need to know about a triangle? All right. So the cosine law, that was the second law that we studied. You need to know two sides and the contained angle, like in this situation right here, two sides and the angle in between those sides. That's a cosine law situation. Or three sides of a triangle, side, side, side. So these are the two situations where cosine law. If you tried to use the sine law, you would realize quickly that you couldn't. So if you're like, oh, I'm not sure, well, if you want to try one, go ahead. If you won't have enough information to use the sine law for these, so you have to use the cosine law. So in order to solve for p here, right, you kind of have to remember how things go in what order. So p squared, if it's a side, p squared is going to be by itself on one side of the equation. Then it's going to equal 8 squared plus 6 squared minus 2 times 8 times 6 times cos 72. Okay, so that's the pattern. And then you solve for p. Make sure you square root this side when you're done to get p by itself. Okay, so that's cosine law. The other one, situation side, 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 use the cosine law to find the angle. Okay, and remember, you always start with the side that's opposite the angle. That's the one that goes on the left side of the equation all by itself. So 2 squared goes on the left side of the equation because cos of y is going to be at the end, right down here. So 2 squared equals 4 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 4 times 5 cos y. And then, so here's where the steps are important, right? Showing your work, communicating your work. Please don't go right from here and then y equals. Show me what you're doing. And in that, you won't make a mistake. If you show your steps, you won't make a mistake. You won't accidentally divide by 4 squared minus 5 squared, right? You won't subtract 2 times 4 times 5. You won't make that mistake. So you bring these guys over first. Bring them over. That's the minus and the minus. Then divide by this part right here, the 2 times 4 times 5. It's not highlighting. There we go. Divide by that next. And then how do you get y by itself? If you've got cos y equals a number. Careful. Cos y. Cos is a special function, right? You can't subtract it. You can't divide it off. You have to do inverse cos. Remember that? Second function cos. Okay, cos to the negative 1. That's how you separate that from y. It's got to be the inverse function. Okay? All right? Good. Okay, this is why we're going over this. Any questions about cosine law? Okay. Many of you are like, this is easy, I got this. That's just great. This is maybe for those of you that are just still a little fuzzy. So when solving a problem that can be modeled by an acute triangle, how do you decide whether to use primary trig ratios, that is sine, cos, and tan, or sine law and cosine law? So there's really 3 different categories. If you have a right triangle, okay, you might be able to use the primary trig ratios. Probably you will be able to, if it's a right triangle situation. If it's not, then you're going to have to look at one of these two, sine or cos. And so again, the sine law, if you have an angle and its opposite side given, if you have that, you can use sine law. Well, you got to have one other piece of information, I guess, but as long as you have that pair, that's the key. Notice up here, we did not have a side and its opposite angle pair given anywhere. Not here and not here. You see that? We don't have anything given. So that's why you can't use sine law. Yes?
So you could use the sine law for the right triangle then?
Yeah, right triangle. Remember when we learned the sine law, the cos of 90 is 0, sorry. So when you subtract 2ab cos 90, it's like you're subtracting 0, so it turns into just Pythagoras. This cosine law turns into just like a squared equals, or c squared equals a squared plus b squared, because this would be 0 if it's cos of 90. So yes, it does work for right triangles. You just wouldn't need to use the cosine law for a right triangle because this all comes out to 0.
What about the sine law?
The sine law, that's a good question actually. I have to get back to you on that one. You could try that. The sine of 90 is 1. So that's if you're using sine of 90, that should work too. Yeah, yeah, it should work too. Cos of 90 is 0, sine of 90 is just 1. So, yeah, that should work. Yeah. But it's just with the right triangles, you can simplify a bit. You don't have to use the sine law or the cosine law. You can go to something that's a little simpler, which is the primary trig ratios. But anyways, yeah, good question. Okay, so your review questions are right here. You can, you're doing all of these, I believe, right? Okay, so these are your review questions for this chapter. And you can have some time now to finish those you started yesterday. Okay. And are there any questions about the review assignment or about anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Do you mind, Frank?